It's all right now. So participants, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here. Uh, Today is the session 2 in the series of sessions that we have started under the theme of perspectives on IBC. IBC, as we know, has been a game-changing legislation whose probably the biggest contribution is that it has changed the credit culture in the country. Uh, and it also underlines the fact that ease of doing business would definitely include ease of exit. So it facilitates in that part. So as I said, today is session 2 in the second series of that we have started now. So for today, we have here with us Mayank sir. I'll just take a moment to briefly introduce sir and then request him uh, to enlighten us with his thoughts. So sir is currently working with IBBI. It's been around 4 years that he's working there, and sir is taking care of inspections and complaints. And prior to joining IBBI, sir was working with Exim Bank. Therein sir was there for almost a decade, and sir was taking care of corporate credit and monitoring department. I think any moment that I take in this session would not serve the purpose. So I would straight away request her to take over. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Nitin. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So thank you, Nitin. So and other participants. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank ICSA Institute of Insolvency Professionals who gave me this opportunity to speak and share my thoughts on this very important aspect of monitoring and inspections. Because since I am working with this department from more than 3 years, so once we talk about inspections or investigations or monitoring, as a professional, many things which came to our mind. Once we give a notice or ask a clarification from the professionals as a professional, that why it is against me, why it is required at all, what will be the consequences of this inspection or investigations. There is no need for it because everything has been done in order. So why it is the questions are being asked about me. So all these things strike our minds once we, as a professional, we are working, and then whoever it is, whether it is an IPA or whether it is IBBI who ask a clarification with respect to any process or anything regarding our profession. So in today's session, we will try to talk and touch all these aspects, that what factors should be taken care of while handling any assignment in whatsoever capacity we are handling, whether it is an IRP or RP or as a liquidator, whatever is the span of that, irrespective of the span of the our assignment. So what all factors should be taken care of, so that if any clarifications or any justifications are being asked in the future as with respect to monitoring, so that can be taken care with due justifications by the insolvency professionals. So before starting our topic of monitoring and inspection, I would just like to deviate a bit and just come on to the issue that what is the main objective of our code as of now. As of date, our objective is to maximize the value of the stakeholders. And when we talk about the stakeholders, it is not only the committee of creditors or its members. It is everyone who is affiliated with the corporate debtor, whether it can be a financial creditor, it can be a smaller employee, or it can be a small contractor who was working for the corporate debtor in the past. So once a company goes into CIRP and insolvency professional comes in and takes into the shoes of board of directors. And now it becomes his responsibility to comply with all laws, all the rules and regulations thereon from that particular day. So with this immense power, it is always expected that his conduct should be above standards and his decision should be unbiased without favoring any specific stakeholder or any creditor. And his ethical standards should be his integrity should be up to the mark, so that every decision taken, it should not be like that only without proper justifications. So what happens once an insolvency professional takes an action during the process? If any of the stakeholders gets dissatisfied, he approach the respective IPA or IBBI for redressal of his grievance. Because a lot of stakeholders are there, then it is not possible that if any of the stakeholders all are satisfied, maybe professional must have done something right and it is not satisfying that particular stakeholder. So he approaches IPA or IBBI. Even the code have the suitable provisions for that. And keeping in mind that provisions of the code, regulations have also been drafted. So apart from that, complaints or grievances which have been received by the board, it is the duty casted on in the code itself or in the regulation with the IPAs and IBBI, so that on a continuous basis, the conduct of the professional should be monitored on a regular basis. So it is nothing that only complaints and grievances triggers to a inspection or investigations or clarifications. It is as the duty of the board and our frontline regulator that they should monitor the conduct of the professionals on a regular basis, so that professionals can also learn during the course of inspection that what went wrong and what should be taken care in the future also, so that it should not get repeated. So in this particular session, we will divide it into 2 sessions, because as of now, IPAs are also conducting their monitoring as a frontline regulator, and IBBI as a principal regulator also comes into and consider the monitoring of its professionals. So in the 2 sessions, we will try to touch all the aspects that whatever needs to be done during the assignment. If an inspection or investigation is there, what are the documents which should be kept ready, in which procedure the document should be provided to our regulator so that no issues are there. Because if you might have also noticed that each and every inspection or investigation or complaint or grievance doesn't lead to any enforcement action. Because if you do have a proper justifications for the decision taken by you during the course, you might have also noticed if you have given due justification with the proper documents, the matter gets closed over there. There is the possibility that reply might be in 2 or 3 tranches, because if an inspecting authority has something in mind and he again asks you. So it is not like that only a monitoring or inspection doesn't only triggers to the enforcement action. So in this particular session, we will try to touch all these aspects from the IPA side also. And in the next session also, I will take over and talk about what is the modus operandi of the inspections or complaints at the IBBI, and what are the consequences, what are the general findings over a period of time. If so many inspections or complaints have been handled by IBBI, what are the general findings also, so that which can be taken care by the professionals during the future course. And on a live case study basis, I will also discuss 1 or 2 case studies, our disciplinary committee orders, which were done on the basis of show cause notices, so that we can also learn from that, so that mistakes doesn't get repeated in the future. So from now onwards, without taking much time, I would like to hand over to Nitika first, so that she may discuss the monitoring policy of the insolvency professionals at IPA level. What are their findings, what needs to be done, what are the form filing needs to be done on a regular basis, so that first you accustom yourself with the monitoring which are conducted by the IPS, and then I will again join you what are the monitoring policies and what are the, along with the our provisions in the code and the regulations, we will discuss it, and then we can also have a question and answer if someone has it in mind. Now I will request Nitika to take over and then start the session.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. As Mayank sir has already stated, that I will take over the part where what all compliances needs to be done by IPs. I will make you aware, and then sir will take over the inspection part. So this session has been divided in such a way that we will make you aware about what all compliances need to be done by the IP, whether it is as per the monitoring policy, as per the regulations, as per the circulars, or as per the code, and then what all compliances needs to be done while when the IP is being monitored by IBBI through inspections. So let me just share the screen. I hope the PPT is visible to everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Nitika.
Okay. So just a brief that, as you all know, the entire structure of insolvency resolution lies on the four pillars. First is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Second is the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Adjudicators, that is the adjudicating authorities, appellate tribunals, Supreme Court, etc. Bankruptcy and Insolvency Information Utilities, IPs, and the insolvency professional agencies. So there are three IPAs: ICSI IIP, Indian Institute of Insolvency Professionals of ICAI, Insolvency Professional Agency of Institute of Cost Accountants of India. As per the BLRC has specifically mentioned the function of an IPA. The IPA's functions are divided into three parts. First is the regulatory functions, that is drafting of standard of code, bylaws. Second is the executive functions. The executive functions covers the monitoring, inspection, and investigation parts. And then the third part is quasi-judicial function, that is addressing the grievances of aggrieved parties, hearing complaints against members, and taking suitable actions. So these three type of functions, it generally creates a statutory framework enabling the IP agencies to enforce their rules on all the members. So since all the three parts, that is the regulatory functions, executive functions, and quasi-judicial functions are also being conducted by IBBI. For example, the monitoring and inspections, grievances, or the disciplinary actions are being done by IBBI also and by IPAs also. But it has been clearly stated that if an IP is being inspected by IBBI, the IPAs won't do their inspections again. So these things have already been stated and they have been clear. So now I will make you aware like what all functions of an IPA does. One second. So as per the code, the mandates of IPAs are first to grant the membership, to monitor the performance of its members, to redress the grievances of stakeholders against insolvency professionals, to initiate disciplinary action, to investigate and inspect the IPs, to develop the profession, and to carry out the research activities. So all the insolvency professional agencies monitor the performance of insolvency professionals through its monitoring policy and its monitoring committee. Now I will make you all aware how the monitoring policy of an particular IPA functions and how the monitoring committee of that particular IPA functions. So all the IPAs have their own monitoring policy, which is approved by their monitoring committee or the governing board. The first time when the monitoring committee was established, it was firstly prepared by the governing board and then the monitoring committee used to update it. So the members of monitoring committee generally includes the professional and experts which are well versed with that subject matter, and the members of monitoring policy through their policy monitor the professional members in the manner which is defined in the policy. So the basic objective of the policy is to evaluate the functions of their members, to collect the information, and to develop the procedures like the code of conduct or the statement of best practices which we have already developed. The monitoring policy also covers the frequency, in what format we will take the information from the IPs, how we will evaluate the performance of our members, and what are the obligations of the professional members. This I have already explained that what is the role of a monitoring policy, that is to review the information, to evaluate the performances, to issue advisory, warning, reprimand letters to the members, to order for the inspections. So first of all, there are two ways in which the monitoring is being done by the IPAs. First is through the desktop monitoring. In desktop monitoring, what we do is we will verify all the disclosures which need to be submitted by the IPs. For example, the relationship disclosure, cost disclosures, CARP forms. Through that, we evaluate the performance of our members. Then through the half-yearly returns which are submitted by IPs, through the records which are submitted by IPs through emails under section 208(2)(d), on the basis of number of assignments handled, on the basis of grievances, on the basis of any specific information which we ask. And the second part is through the inspections. The inspections are also of two ways: routine inspections and trigger based inspections. Routine is the inspection is governed by the inspection policy that I will briefly explain later. And then what are the reporting mandates for IPs? As the time-based reporting and half-yearly reporting. In time-based reporting, IPs needs to submit relationship disclosures, cost disclosures, and the CARP forms. And second is the half-yearly reporting, which is through the half-yearly returns. So every IPA, apart from these reportings, every IPA has their own reporting formats. Some of the IPAs ask their IPs to submit the information on monthly basis. Some do not ask, some ask on the basis of events only. So that is, with every IPA, they are asking the information differently, as they're empowered to ask any information from their IPs. And in case the IPs do not submit the information timely, late filing fees have been imposed by all the IPs. For example, with ICICI IIP, the late filing fees is 500 rupees per month after the due date, which is in lines with the late filing fees charged by IBBI as per regulation 40. So what we do as per our monitoring policy, for example, we will analyze all the information. For example, every month we monitor 10 insolvency professionals. We verify their cost disclosures, relationship disclosures, CARP forms, and half-yearly returns. We select these 10 IPs on random basis, on the basis of number of assignments they have handled. Then we seek clarification from them if we have found out something. After getting clarification, if we find out that some non-compliances are there, so we give the particular IP particular chance to give his submissions. Then those submissions along with those non-compliances are submitted to the monitoring committee. The monitoring committee will analyze and they will direct us to do the inspections of that particular IP, and that inspection will be covered in the trigger based inspection. The second thing which monitoring committee does is, for example, if we do any inspection of an IP, after conducting the inspection report along with his replies, along with the broad observations and the governing regulations and governing procedures, that will be submitted to the monitoring committee. The monitoring committee will analyze that. Each observation is being discussed by the monitoring committee, and if they are of the opinion that the particular IP has conducted some non-compliance which is major, then they will direct the secretariat, that is the insolvency professional agency, to issue the show cause notice. Otherwise, they will issue the advisory, reprimand letter, or some direction to close, and they will close the matter. After issuance of show cause notice, the matter will be decided by the disciplinary committee. So the role of monitoring committee will close at a point when the show cause notice is issued. After that, its disposal will be done by the disciplinary committee. So under the regulations and the circulars, there are different compliances which needs to be done by the IP. First is the relationship disclosure. I hope every IP will be aware of this, that they have, as per IBBI circular dated 16th January, now this circular has been made part of the regulations. In this, they have to disclose their relationship with particular corporate data or the relationship of all the professionals appointed within 3 days of that particular event. And this relationship disclosure needs to be submitted on each IPA's website, and this disclosure also needs to be submitted in the CARP forms. Now the second compliance which needs to be done by IPs is the cost disclosure, which needs to be submitted by every IP on the demission, either the demission as an IRP or demission as the RP. So they have to disclose of the fees which they have charged. This cost disclosure is divided into two parts. The first part is of the process cost, or the second part is of the process of that, the cost of that particular CARP for conducting the CARP. So this needs to be submitted. There are two columns in that particular cost disclosure. First is the fees charged, and second is the fees paid or the fees ratified by the COC. So you will have to disclose both the things, whether the fees has been ratified by the COC or not. This needs to be submitted within 7 days of the demission. For example, if a particular IRP has demitted his office, but that same IRP is continuing his RP, he has to disclose his cost disclosure within 7 days from demission of IRP. Then the third very important point is appointment of only registered valuers. So as per IBBI circular dated 17th October 2018, no insolvency professional shall appoint a person other than a registered valuer which is registered with IBBI to conduct any valuation under the code or any regulation made. So now all the IPs have to only appoint registered valuers, and registered valuer means registered valuer as registered with IBBI in that particular class. For example, if you are appointing a person for land and building, that person should be a registered valuer in that particular class only. And each and you have to appoint two registered valuer for one particular class. So if you are appointing for land and building, plant and machinery, and securities and financial assets, you have to appoint 6 registered valuers. Then the fourth point is filing of CARP forms as per the circular dated 14th August, and now this circular has formed part of regulations, which is regulation 40B. So there are IP1 and CARP1 to CARP8. So IP1 is the pre-assignment thing. That is, this includes consent to act IP as IRP, RP, liquidator, pre-pack, or individual insolvency. Whenever you will give your consent to act as a insolvency professional in any of the particular category, you have to submit IP1. I hope I'm clear to everybody. You can ask questions if you have any. Then form number first is CARP1. CARP1 needs to be submitted from the commencement till issue of public announcement. In this CARP1, you have to disclose the details of public announcement, details of IRP, details of CD, details of authorized representative. This needs to be submitted within 7 days of making public announcement. For example, if you are making a public announcement today, within 7 days of making the public announcement, you have to submit CARP1 with IBBI. In this CARP1, you have to also submit the details of the disclosure made. So you'll first have to, when the assignment will start, you have to simultaneously make the public announcement, and simultaneously you have to do the relationship disclosure, which needs to be done within 3 days of the commencement of CARP. And then the details of that disclosure made on IPA side, that also needs to be submitted in CARP1. Then the form is CARP2. So this CARP2 will be submitted within 7 days of replacement of IRP, which means this CARP2 and the cost disclosure on IPA side will be submitted simultaneously, because the timeline is within 7 days of replacement, that is within 7 days of the demission of office. This will include the details of claim, COC meeting, cost incurred, disclosure file. So everything till the demission, till the first COC meeting, you have to disclose all the details in this CARP2. Then I will firstly explain CRP 6. For example, if you are an IRP, CRP 1 and CRP 2 only will be applicable on you, and IP 1 of course, and then CRP 6 is for all IRP and RP cases because it contains certain events. For example, if you are filing PUFE transactions, if you are raising interim finance, if there has been premature closure of CRP, there has been request for liquidation before completion. For example, if the case is being closed before the constitution of COC, in that case, IP1 will be applicable, CRP1 will be applicable, but CRP2 won't be applicable. Only CRP6 needs to be filed by you because it will contain the details of premature closure. You can file CRP2 stating the details of costs incurred, but that won't be mandatory because you have not constituted the COC, and there was no replacement of IRP also. Then if the IRP is continued as resolution professional, then you'll have to add the assignment as RP again on IBBI website. IBBI will approve that particular case because this all functions on approval basis only on that IBBI dashboard. Then other forms CARP 3 to CARP 8 will be applicable, will be opened, and then you will be able to file. So CARP 3 is from appointment of IRP till the issue of information memorandum. So all the compliances till the information memorandum issuance needs to be disclosed in this CARP 3 form, which will be done within 7 days of issue of information memorandum to the members of COC. Now the timeline of information memorandum has been changed because of the regulations. So this will be filed, I think, most probably with CRP 5 only when you will issue the request for resolution plan. With CRP 4 when you will issue RFRP. Earlier it was within 54 days you will have, like earlier it was like within 54 days आपको information memorandum issue करना था, but now you have to issue the information memorandum within 95 days of the commencement of CRP. So this CRP 3 and CRP 4 will be filed simultaneously by all the IPs. This will contain the details of resolution professional, details of registered valuers, details of information memorandum, the attachments of information memorandum, the financial statements, all will be submitted in this particular CARP 3. Here, the details of registered valuers will also be covered. You'll have to mention all the details of how many registered valuers are appointed, what was the liquidation cost, and what was the cost, what was the value which the registered valuer has like a certain, all these details will be submitted in CARP 3. And then the CARP 4, in CARP 4 you will have to mention the details of request for resolution plan, evaluation matrix, everything. This will be done within 7 days of issue of RFRP. The details of provisional list of resolution applicants, who were the resolution applicants, all these, that information will also be submitted in this. Then
Madam, can I ask one question here?
Yes sir, yes sir.
I'm Srinivas Sharma from Hyderabad.
Yes, sir.
Insolvency professional. Suppose if the RP receives fresh claims, this you are mentioning details of claims in CRP2. This is by IRP actually.
Yes sir.
Which form has to be used for the claims received by RP? If RP
Sir,
is changed, replaced,
yes,
and
sir.
he receives fresh claims.
Yes, sir. Sir, see, in CRP 5 also you can mention the details of claimants. In CRP 5 also there is one column where you will have to mention the details of list of creditors. So there you can update. And for example, in CRP 3 you want to attach. So all the CARP forms have the option of attaching the additional attachments. So whenever you'll find that you have updated something, you can mention the details as per the additional attachment there. There is no need to modify the forms. Modification is only required when you have, like, you have misrepresented something, you have, like, you forgot to mention something. Only though in those cases the modification is required, not in each and every case.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. So in CARP 4, you have to mention the details till the RFRP issuance, and then in CARP 5, you have to mention the details of claimants, resolution plan, liquidation. CARP 5 is the last form or the closure form where all the details will be covered. For example, if the company is like if the company has been liquidated, has been ordered for liquidation, there is no resolution. In that case also CRP 5 is applicable, because it is required to be filed within 7 days from approval or rejection of resolution plan or order of liquidation. So in CRP 5 will be filed in two cases: one, if there is the resolution; second, in case there is liquidation. In liquidation also there are two things. For example, if the liquidation is done before the completion of CARP, like that is before 180 days, then CRP 6 will be filed. CRP 5 won't be filed. But if the liquidation has been ordered after 180 or 270 days, then CRP 5 will be filed. So liquidation form will be filed in these two cases. Either in liquidation details will be filed in two forms, either in CRP 5 or in CRP 6. And there is one more thing. For example, if you are continuing as IRP only, you have not been appointed as the resolution professional, and no other person also has been appointed as the resolution professional, you are acting as deemed RP. So after 40 days only, you will have to add the assignment as resolution professional, deemed resolution professional on IBBI website. And all these forms, CRP 3, 4, 5, 6 will be filed by you, because you are functioning in the capacity of resolution professional only. So you'll have to make sure that all the compliances are submitted. However, CRP 2 you may skip because you have not demitted the office, but CRP 3, 4, 5 will be filed. Similarly, cost disclosure for demission on IRP won't be filed. That will be filed when you will actually demit the office, but all the compliances as RP will be done. Then there are two other forms, CARP 7 and CARP 8. These two forms are like, generally these forms are only the forms in which the IPs are making mistakes or they're not submitting the information properly. For example, in CARP 7, this needs to be filed whenever there is delay in the timelines. For example, if you have not made the public announcement within 3 days, so after 3 days, like there has been a delay of 3 days, so 3 plus 3 days, by 7th day you have to inform the IBBI through its portal that you have like not made this compliance within the specified timelines, and this needs to be submitted every 30 days till the default is there. After that you may skip. For example, in most cases this form is required when the CRP is not completed within 180 days. So this 180 days has nothing to do with extensions. For example, if you are under extension only, AA has granted you the extension, still you have to inform IBBI and IPA through this form that this case is continuing beyond 180 days, even though you have got the extension. So every 30 days you have to submit the information. This is just an information form where we will be able to know what is the current status, and after every 30 days, like what has been an update, what has been the update in this particular case. So in this, for example, the information memorandum is not issued within the timeline, so this timeline has been changed now. So according to that only, according to new timelines only, you have to file this form. Then the last form is CRP 8. CRP 8, there you, as you all know, that a resolution professional has to form an opinion under section 43, 45, 50, 66. By they have to file an application by 135th day of the insolvency commencement date, and you have to file CRP 8 by 140th day, that is after 5 days of making the application. In most cases this timeline is not achieved. Generally by 135th day the IP does not submit the application with the adjudicating authority, but in this form you have to mention the details, like whether the opinion has been formed or not, how the opinion was formed. So you have to submit CRP 8 irrespective of the fact whether you have made the opinion or not, or whether the transaction audit is under process, or there has been non-cooperation, you have not got the information to conduct the audit, but you have to submit the CRP8 by 140th day stating that you are unable to make any opinion. So this form needs to be submitted in every scenario. So I hope CRP forms are clear. You can ask any questions if you have.
Suppose if the CRP8 financials are not available, and because of that the RP is not able to form an opinion or something like that, then also it needs to be filed. That's what you're saying.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It needs to be filed. You just mentioned that you are unable to make any opinion because the financials are not available. That can be mentioned. So after that, there is submission of half-yearly return. In half-yearly returns, a professional member has to submit the information in the records of ongoing. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I have one question.
Yes.
Yes, you are saying that deemed RP. So whether the deemed RP has to apply to NCLT for approval to make him RP? No need.
No, that is the decision of COC, sir.
No, COC is not formed. Or COC is formed, COC is not being appointed, and IRP is not being appointed as RP. But after 40 days, you are saying that he will work as deemed RP.
Yes, sir.
And he has to apply in CIRP 3 and 4.
Sir, that particular IRP has to function as the resolution professional.
Okay, but whether there is any approval is needed from NCLT or anyone?
No, sir. After 40 days, it is deemed. It is mentioned in the regulations only that
but
you have to function.
Up to how many days it has to be deemed?
Till there is no approval of resolution professional, that will be done by your committee of creditors only. They will make an application to adjudicating authority to appoint other person except you for that if they want another person.
Okay, but
you have to make.
But deemed RP has to not apply to NCLT to become.
Yes, sir.
Deemed RP or
that
RP.
Will be done, sir. That will be done through your committee of creditors. If your committee of creditors will ask you, then you will file an application. It will be done by you only, but on recommendation of your committee of creditors. Because you will put the agenda in the COC meeting to appoint you as RP.
Okay, thank you.
So the next compliance is submission of half-yearly returns. Every IP has to submit half-yearly return, irrespective of the fact whether that particular person has any assignments in hand or not, or whether the particular person has not handled any assignment during that 6 months of time. So it is applicable on all the IPs. You have to submit this within 15 days from the end of particular half year. For example, the particular half year will end on 31st March. You have to submit it by 15th of April. After that, 500 late filing fees will be charged. For example, from 16th April, the late filing fees will be applicable. 500 will be applicable in the month of April, then 500 in the month of May, June. It will accumulate like that. So
what is the rationale for filing this form if the RPS no assignment on hand?
Sir, see, actually, how we monitor the IPs? We monitor the IPs through their submissions only. So through public announcement, generally we verify how many assignment IPs every month. How we maintain the database is we check from the public announcement that how many IPs got the assignment. Then we will verify their compliances, whether they have filed the cost disclosures, relationship disclosures, or CRP forms. So the whole monitoring function is being done on the basis of the IPs who are submitting the information. So we have, if the IP won't submit the information that whether he is handling any assignment or not, how we will be able to know that whether this particular IP is handling anything? So for example, every month, every half year, we check the IPs who have nil assignments, and then we verify whether that particular IP got any assignment or not. That is why we ask the insolvency professionals to submit the half-yearly returns. In that, they will state that they have not handled any assignment or they have handled one assignment. And for example, in the half-yearly return, they have mentioned that they have handled one assignment, but they did not submit any disclosure, relationship, cost, or CIP forms. So through that, we will track and will ask the particular IP to make all the disclosures. So this is just to cross-verify whether the IP has any assignments or not. So for all the insolvency professionals, we have made the compliance calendar. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, like you just mentioned, the half-yearly returns will help you know whether they've taken up any assignments or not. But then if they've just given a consent and if they've not done that disclosure, how will you be able to identify that?
Ma'am, we do not start our monitoring when when they submit the consent. We start our monitoring and we maintain the data only from the date when the CRP is commenced. So the consent data is different. So if the assignment is initiated, then only we'll make a track that this particular IP got the assignment.
Fine.
Now I will just brief you about, for 1 second.
Madam, mic is muted.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is this compliance calendar visible to everybody?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes, it is visible.
Okay, so these are the compliance calendars which we have prepared for all the IPs. This has been divided into three parts. One is the procedural part, that which needs to be done by IPs as per the code and regulations, that is making public announcements and constituting the COC. Second is to be the compliances which are to be submitted with IBBI or IPS. Third are the general compliances. So this may help all the insolvency professionals as a ready reckoner where you can refer everything in this compliance calendar, all the payments to IBBI or IPAs or the fees or the small forms also has been mentioned. For example, it has been mentioned in the first point only that you first have to take AFA, then you have to file IP1, then you have to submit the public announcement, you have to make public announcement, etc. Then in the last column, last part, we have covered the compliances which needs to be done by IPs. For example, what fees they can be charged as per the new regulations, what is like the performance link incentive fees, what is that is also been mentioned, membership fees, professional fees. So through these compliance calendars you can refer, and in that way all the chances of non-compliances or delay compliances will be minimized. So you can refer all these compliances here. For example, for liquidators and voluntary liquidators also such similar compliance calendars has been prepared. So now coming back, okay, so after all the compliances which I have mentioned, there is some common errors that we have noticed in filing of disclosures or forms. So in case of relationship disclosures which are filed at IPA portal within 3 days of making the relevant timeline, what we have seen is there has been non-submissions of details of all the professionals. The IPs has not submitted the complete information of all the professionals appointed. We have found out that the appointment of professionals were made without proper appointment letters or confirmation letters, and in many cases we have seen that insolvency professionals have appointed their relatives or the related parties during their assignments, which is prohibited under the code, which has been clearly mentioned. You cannot appoint your related parties in the assignments. We have seen that, for example, an IP has appointed 10 insolvency professional, 10 professionals, but he had made disclosure of only 3 or 4. So in that, so that is a clear non-compliance which should not be done. Then in case of cost disclosures also, we have seen that, for example, an IP has mentioned that he appointed 5 professionals in relationship disclosure, but when there was the time to submit the cost disclosure, he submitted only the details of 2 or 3 professionals. So there was the mismatch. Then in some cases the relationship disclosure was not submitted at all. There has been some cases where he has submitted the expenses on running of the business, however the company was not at all going concern, so that was also a mismatch. There was the points where he did not maintain the proper invoices, like the engagement letters or the invoices, or like anything which is supporting of that particular appointment was not maintained by the IP. And the other point was the fees which was paid to the professional that has no approval of COC. It has been clearly mentioned in regulation 3334 that only that part which has been rectified by COC will be made the part of CARP cost. So you will have to make sure that every professional you are appointing, that appointment is in hands of IPs. There is no need to take approval of COC for appointment, but you have to make sure that their fees is approved by them. You can do it in 2 parts. Either you can like take the approval in the first meeting only on the basis of like you can prepare a budget and you can ask the COC members to approve it, or you can get it approved on case to case basis. Like whenever there will be an appointment, you can ask the COC to ratify it, or you can take prior approval. That is up to you only.
Madam, one question here. If the company is a going concern, if any professional are survived for advice and running for running the company, where will it fall, this appointment of professionals?
Sir, it will cover under process cost. It will cover under the cost of running the CARP only, not on the running of the business, because you have appointed a particular professional for conducting the CARP only. So that is the part of first part only, not the part of running the business, because running business means you have, like, there are workers, you have paid the electricity bill, you have paid the bill to the you have paid the remuneration to the employees. So all that will be covered in running the business, not running the process.
Okay, I understood. But if any professional is appointed to seek an opinion on the running the business, not the running the process.
Still, sir, that particular person has been appointed for your help only, and you are running the process. You're not running the business. Cost is the cost, for example, which is the day-to-day expenses on running the particular business. Payment for electricity, guards, that. So that particular, you are taking a professional help, so that will be covered under running the process only, not under running the business.
A clear demarcation has to be made. Suppose if any specific professional is appointed for running the business, that has to be part of the running costs, not CRP cost.
It is the part of CARP cost, sir.
A little confused. I'm not yet clarified. Not this thing. My question is, if any professionals are appointed for running the CRP, understood. It has to be part of CRP cost. Suppose if a power project is come under CRP, and if it is already functioning, suppose if I take an opinion whether to procure coal from a particular agency, where from the coal should be procured, and I appoint a professional seeking his help, it is in no way concerned with CRP. It is only concerned with the running the business.
I understand your point, sir, but in my understanding, since a professional has been appointed, that person has been appointed by you for helping you, you are just taking an opinion. So that will be covered under part 1 only on running the CARP. And if any particular person has been appointed in running that business, for example, for coal procurement, or any worker has been appointed for doing the basic day-to-day working, that his remuneration or his any salary will be covered under part 2. That is as per my understanding only.
Okay.
So while submitting the CARP forms, we have seen that the CARP forms are not filed, like they were incomplete. Correct details were not submitted. The details were not in consonance with the disclosures submitted. There were incomplete attachments. The forms were not filed even though they were applicable. So all these things should be kept in mind while filing the disclosures, because there are heavy delay filing fees, or for modification also there is a particular fees. So you should make sure that whatever information you are filing, that should be complete, that should be in consonance with the information already submitted, so that the fees or the delay filing charges can be avoided. Then there were other, while doing the desktop monitorings, there have been some other points which we have seen while doing the desktop monitoring, that I will just make you all aware. First is, there were deviations in timelines. There were many IPs who did not adhere with the timelines prescribed under the code and regulations. For example, for determination of PUFE transactions, for circulation of notices, minutes, for invitation of expression of interest. Second was non-adhering to the reporting requirements, that is the relationship disclosures, cost disclosures, or the CARP forms. Those were not filed on time. Then the third point is, there were non-maintenance of website during CARP. It has been observed that there was no updation on the website of the corporate debtor, despite of having the fact that the website was there. And the other point was, in some cases we have seen that the website was functional, but the confidential information about the proceedings of the CARP was also mentioned on the website. For example, the minutes were uploaded. In one or two cases we have seen that the IP has uploaded the resolution plans also, which were received. Request for resolution plan was uploaded on the website. So you should avoid only those details, for example the details of claims, details of expression of interest, and only if in case of real estate companies the notices can be uploaded, but the minutes or the confidential information should not be submitted. In the regulations it has been clearly mentioned what all information can be uploaded on the website, so you should upload only those details. So, and we have seen there was lack of transparency and the records were not maintained properly. The appointment letters and the related invoices of many professionals were not found. Attendance sheets were not there in many COC meetings. Voting or e-voting results were not provided. Complete record of circulation of evaluation matrix was not there. Claim verification records were not maintained properly. Undertakings were not there. And the records were not maintained properly. When we generally do desktop monitorings or inspection, we have seen that the insolvency professionals do not maintain the proper records. So you should always make sure whatever process you are doing, the records should be maintained properly. There has been the proper regulation also with regard to maintenance of records, so that should be kept in mind, and you should always maintain proper records because anytime inspection can be done, so you should always be ready for that. So in some cases, we have seen that the fees were not placed before that. I have already explained that the cost was not ratified by the COC and for forming the part of CRP cost. Then we have seen that, this is interesting, that we have seen that while verifying the minutes, it was noticed that the fees for filing the petition has also been taken into account as CRP cost. Filing the petition means before the admission of CRP, the fees when the petition was filed by the applicant, that fees was also charged, that was also made part of CRP cost, but that should not be done. Then we have seen that many unregistered valuers are appointed. This registered valuer issue is like in quite many cases we have seen that IPs are appointing unregistered valuers or they have not appointed the registered valuer for proper class. So you should always appoint registered valuers for that particular class. You should always ask the particular registration certificate of that particular valuer before his appointment, that that valuer is appointed in that particular class only. Then we have seen that in while taking over the management of the corporate debtor, we have seen that the IPs do not submit proper communications with the directors, government authorities, local authorities, or in many cases the with financial institutions authorized representatives were not changed, like the signing authority, those were not changed by the IP. However, you should always take the control and management of the CD from the day you become the IRP. So these things should be done, and they should be proper records also of all the communications that you are doing with all the authorities. Then in some cases we have seen there was outsourcing of work during CARP. The all the duties which are mentioned under the code, which is with the IP only, those duties were also outsourced in many of his assignments that we have seen. Then we have seen that the while handing over the records to the succeeding resolution professional, there was the records were not handed over properly by the IRP or the RP. In in particular this case only, now the regulations has been amended and a particular email ID has to be maintained by every IP. For example, when you will start the CARP, you have to make the different email ID of that particular CD, and in that email ID also only you will make all the communications, and the password will be shared with that succeeding RP or the change resolution professional. Then we have seen that when the IP has issued the addendum to Form G for the extension of submission of EOI, that was not published in newspapers. But it has been clearly mentioned that whenever there has been any updation in Form G, that will be termed as the fresh issuance of EOI only. So the entire procedure for publishing in newspapers should be followed. It's not like that you will just extending the EOI date, so only that date will be extended. you'll have to make sure that it is published in that newspaper again, and again the EOI is submitted to IBBI. Then the provisional list and final list of resolution applicants were not submitted properly. There were no proper records. It was not submitted to the COC members or the resolution applicants for their inputs. Proper NDAs were not obtained. In one case, we have seen that the net worth or the erstwhile money which is communicated to the prospective resolution applicant, that was quite different from the one which is approved by the COC. So these type of mistakes should not be done, even though the IP mentioned that it was inadvertent, but these are quite the mistakes which should not be done, because this may lead to the conduct of IP, misconduct of the IP. Then the application for liquidation, which was approved by COC 8 or 9 months back, uh, that was filed after 8 or 9 months. This case was ongoing beyond 1 year. Liquidation application was not filed for extension. However, after 1 year only, you have to make the application for extension, because you have to complete the liquidation within 1 year of time. Then in one case, we have seen that the provisional and final list of resolution applicants were finalized and shared with the stakeholders without verification of eligibility of section 29A. So the 29A verification was not done. It was not complete. However, the final list and provisional list was circulated by that particular IP. And then in one case, this fixed fees or the milestone fees was charged. However, this matter is pending with adjudicating authorities. So maybe this will be decided by NCLAT only. And then in this particular case, the particular insolvency professional appointed a legal counsel for drafting the reply of complaint. A complaint was filed against particular IP in the name of the corporate debtor. However, the complaint was filed in his particular name. So any expense of that particular complaint or the procedure will not form part of the CIRP cost of that particular corporate debtor, because the complaint was received against that particular IP only, not in the capacity of the IRP of CD, but in his personal capacity. So any expenses cannot be charged from that particular corporate debtor.
Ma'am, you'll be sharing this presentation, right?
Yes, ma'am, we will share.
Okay. Okay.
So these were some of the points which we have seen during our inspections or through our desktop monitoring, which we have done. And now there are some important points in the regulations, which I will just like all the insolvency professionals to know. First is that an IRP or RP who is the director or partner of an insolvency professional entity shall not continue as the IRP or RP in the CARP if the insolvency professional entity represents any other stakeholder in that CARP. This clearly mentions that whenever you are being appointed in a particular case, you or your partners or the IP should be independent of that particular CD. You should not be related. If you are related anywhere, you shall not continue with that particular case, because you should be independent, and and there should not be any relation of you or any of your related parties in that particular corporate debtor. Then the email account, I've already explained that you should open a specific email account and use it for all your correspondences with the stakeholders. And in the event of the replacement, the handover should be given to the new resolution professional. The insolvency professional shall appoint a professional under arm's length basis only. However, relative of the RP, related party of the CD, an auditor of the corporate debtor at any time during the 5 years, these persons should not be appointed. For example, you cannot appoint your spouse in a particular case as other professional, because that will be termed as a related party. You cannot appoint any other. For example, you and A and Mr. B are the partners of a firm XYZ. So you cannot appoint B also in particular case individually. You cannot appoint XYZ also individually in that particular case. And however, you can appoint an IPE. You can take the services of IPE. IPE is an exception. The invoices should be raised in the name of the professional only and should be paid directly into the bank account of such professional. You cannot appoint that particular person's firm in a case. However, fees is being paid to that particular IP. If you are appointing an IP, individual IP, you have to make sure that fees is being paid to his particular bank account only. There have been many orders of IBBI. There has been a circular also in this case. So you should make sure that there is complete transparency in all the professionals and all the appointments. Then the insolvency professional at any given point of time may not have more than 10 assignments as the resolution professional in the CARP, of which not more than 3 shall have admitted claims exceeding 1,000 crore rupees each. So this is the part of the code of conduct. As per the IP regulations, you cannot handle more than 10 assignments at a particular given point of time. Then you cannot engage in any employment when you hold a valid authorization for assignment. Then you cannot appoint your relatives. Then you should, yes, and then you should not provide any service for or in connection with the assignment which is being undertaken by any of your relatives. Then an insolvency professional shall disclose the fees payable to him, the fees payable to IPE, and the fees charged, and you should publish. That is the part of cost disclosures. You should raise the bills and invoices in your own name only. Then this I have already explained. And then insolvency professionals shall not accept any fees or charges other than those which are disclosed to and approved by the persons fixing his remuneration. The other point is the insolvency professionals shall not accept or share any fees or charges from any professional or support service provider who are appointed under the process. You cannot ask any percentage from any of the professional that you are appointing in a particular case. Then you have to make sure that all the cost which is there under the CARP, that should not be that should be reasonable. You should exercise reasonable care and diligence while taking care of all your compliances. And any insolvency professional shall not include any amount towards any loss, including penalty, if any. This was the case which I have already explained. That particular IP, he included his fees of legal counsel, etc. in the CRP. That should not be done, or any of the laws or penalties also should not be formed part of the CARP cost.
One basic question here, which you may feel like, any professional is appointed by an RP or a IRP, like engineers or some other professionals, in whose name the invoice should be raised. There are some conflicting versions here.
His name only, sir. Since you are appointing that particular IP professional only, you should raise invoice in his name only, and it should be paid to his account.
No, that's okay. But if he raises an invoice, it should be raised in corporate debtor's name, or because the appointment is given by an IRP or RP, it has to be raised in RP's name.
Sir, he can raise RP name, the particular RP in the matter of CD. So he can write in that way. That would be clear, and that would be transparent.
Okay.
So now I will just make you all I will just briefly explain the inspection policy of IPAs. Then Mayank sir will make you aware about how the inspection and investigation of IBBI will functions. One second, I'm just sharing.
Madam, while issuing the appointment letter to professional, can we use letterhead of the CD?
Yes, sir, you can use.
it is better to standardize the appointment letters, madam, because we are standardizing so many forms. Appointment of professionals also, if you standardize the letters, so that will be beneficial to everyone.
Your mic is mute, ma'am.
Mute yourself.
Yes, sir. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. I hope this inspection policy document is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes.
It is visible.
Okay, so this is the inspection policy of ICSI IRP. In this policy, we have covered like what all regulations, what all the like whatever has been mentioned under the code or the regulations about the inspection of IPs by IPS, what is its objectives, definitions, etc. So as I've already explained that as per the monitoring policy, we can do monitoring by two ways, either through desktop monitoring or through inspections. And the word inspections also include e-inspections, because after COVID, we are conducting online inspections only. Before COVID, we were visiting the IP's office and we were doing the physical inspections. So the inspections are also like that can be done by two ways, either through routine inspections or through event-based inspections. So the inspecting authority is each inspection is carried out through a pre-authorization by the managing director or the head of the particular IPA. That particular managing director or the chief operating officer, that person will issue an order to the inspecting authority to conduct the inspection of the particular insolvency professional, and that can okay. So the inspections are two types, routine inspections and event-based inspections. Routine inspections we do on the basis of annual inspection plan. Every IPA has their own annual inspection plan, which is approved by the monitoring committee, where they mention the percentage of insolvency professionals which will be monitored, which will be inspected, and what will be the frequency of inspection. That annual inspection plan covers the details of, for example, the IPs who have more than 10 assignments, that will be inspected first. 20% of those IPs who have more than 10 assignments will be inspected. 20% of the IPs who are handling liquidation assignments will be inspected. 20 or 30% of the IPs will be inspected when any conduct like any particular case or any, for example, RERA or such cases are there if the particular IP is handling. So that annual inspection plan is made in such a way that they have made percentage of which type of insolvency professionals will be inspected. And the other is the event-based inspection. In event-based inspection, there are different categorization. First is the professional members who are flagged under desktop monitoring. As I already explained that there were IPs which we have conducted desktop monitoring, and then through that we have found out that there were certain non-compliances. So the monitoring committee will ask the secretariat to conduct the inspection through the event-based inspection. And then in the matters where some complaint was received against a professional member, there were on the directions of IBBI or the governing board, we have received that inspection needs to be done. There were cases when we have seen that the IP has contravened any of the provisions of the code. There were some of the orders of the tribunal or the board where we can do direct inspections and such other matters. So this list is inclusive. We can do inspection anytime if we find out that the conduct of a particular IP is not good, we can do the inspection. So the professional members who are flagged under inspection, they have to submit a complete questionnaire with all the documents to the monitoring officer for inspection. Generally in the monitoring inspecting authority with IPAs, there are three officers. One is the head and the two are the persons who are conducting the inspection. So three people will do the complete inspection and they will do all the communication with that particular IP. So after conducting inspection, like during inspection also, if we find out that on assessing the documentation, we find out that the monitoring visit is necessary, we can conduct the meeting also. So these are generally the duties, rights, and responsibilities of the inspecting authority. Then in the process of inspection, first is constitution of inspecting authority, that is appointment of inspecting authority, issuance of inspection order. So after issuance of inspection order by the inspecting authority, we will issue the notice to the IP. At least 10 days notice will be given to the particular IP, and we will ask the IP to submit the pre-inspection questionnaire, which will cover the details. And then all the documents that we will ask that also need to be submitted by a particular date of time. After that, we will conduct the inspection. The inspection is generally conducted for a 3 days time. In that 3 days time, we will conduct the inspection on the basis of all the records submitted. We don't ask the records simultaneously while conducting the inspection. We will, whatever records the IP has submitted before the inspection date, we will analyze all the records, and on that basis we will submit the draft inspection report within 10 working days to the head of the department who have issued the inspection order. So after that, he will analyze that inspection report, and that draft inspection report will be submitted to the IP for providing his comments within 15 days. So whatever information he has not submitted, whatever clarifications that we have sought, all that information will be asked from that IP within 15 days of time. So after getting the reply on the draft inspection report, final inspection report will be shared with the IP or the inspecting authority who have issued the inspection order. After that, all the inspection reports, all the inspections which we do, we will place that before the monitoring committee for their consideration and for the further action, if any. And inspection report will be closed in 3 ways. One is through the closure, like there is no other thing which is required, all the compliances were completed and everything is okay. Second is we have found out there are few things which needs advisory, like through advisory only we can ask the IP to take care in future. So we will close the inspection by issuing an advisory letter or a caution letter or any direction which we may ask. Or the third point is where we see there are clear non-compliances. In that case also, the monitoring committee will ask the secretariat to issue the show cause notice, and that show cause notice will be issued by the secretariat, but it will be disposed of by the disciplinary committee of that particular IPA, and there will be no role of the monitoring committee members or the inspecting authority or any person who were associated in the inspection, because so that there is transparency. The disciplinary committee will hear the matter as a separate matter, and they will close it as per their own discretion and as per the reasonable opportunity which will be given to the IP. So I think from I will ask Mayank Mehta sir to take over the session from here, and all the IPs can ask questions if they have any. You can ask questions, and then we can take a break of 5 or 10 minutes, and then Mayank sir can rejoin the session and he will take it from here.
What is the basis for this inspection, madam? It is a random one, or how it is?
Yes, sir. There are two ways. I have, like I just explained. One is through the routine inspections. It is on random basis, and then the second is event-based inspections, where we do a particular, like there are particular criteria where we do the inspection.
Okay, that means the number of assignments, if there are more, then you will be conducting definitely.
No, sir. This was just an example. For example, there are different categories. For example, an IP has handled various radar cases. That can also be one of the points. So these points are discussed by the monitoring committee only, and that is as per the annual inspection plans, which is confidential. That cannot be shared. For example, we like in that annual inspection plan, the liquidation assignments, voluntary liquidation assignments, that is also a part. So it covers every aspect. So Trashla, I think we can take a break of 5 or 10 minutes, then we can rejoin.
Sure. We can take a minute of 10 minutes and then we will rejoin at 3:35. Sorry, 2:35. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Nitika.
So you may begin with the session now.
Okay. Let me share my screen. If you can, please continue your screen.
Sir, just a minute.
Yeah. So, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Just a minute. So, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So, we will just now start with the issue of monitoring of service providers at IBBI. So we will talk about, there are two set of regulations with us: complaints and grievances handling regulations and inspections and investigation regulations. So we will talk about that, what are the various provisions under the code which enables the IBBI to do the monitoring, including complaints, how to handle complaints and inspection, and how the service providers need to reply on that, and what are the future consequences of that. So first, monitoring of IPs. Being a regulator of insolvency, it is one of the important functions of IBBI to have in place a very robust mechanism for the monitoring of IPs. As I earlier told you also in the introductory section, that it is a duty casted upon the regulator to regularly monitor the performance of its service provider, so that it should balance the interest of all the stakeholders, and the objective to maximize the interest of the stakeholders should be completed. An IP which comes into CIRP or a liquidation process, as we earlier mentioned this also, that he should take all the decisions in fair and objective manner, since he steps into the shoes of directors. Now he is whole and soul, so it is always expected that an IP should have a higher standard of professionals and ethics and while performing his duties. So what things which needs to be kept in mind while performing an IP, that he should, the decisions taken by him should be that his integrity should not be effective. He should be objective with all the decisions taken by him. Independence should not favor any of the stakeholders, and he should be honest and impartial. These are just repetitive of, you might be all aware of that. These are the parts of our regular code of conduct of IP. So as per our code, there is section 217, which authorizes any of the aggrieved person who can file a complaint or grievance against the service providers with the board. So considering this section 218, IBBI notified the complaints and grievances handling regulations also, which describes in detail that for the complainant also how to file a complaint with the board, in which manner, and how in a time-bound manner that should be redressed. And what happens to the complaint after that, once it lands to the board, how it needs to, how the service providers need to reply on that. So entire mechanism has also been given in the complaints and grievances regulations. Further, section 218, it authorized board to conduct inspection or investigation of a service provider. Section 219, consequently, it authorized that if any wrongdoing has been found during the course of inspection or investigation, board authorized the board to issue show cause notice. And considering these two sections, board notified the inspections and investigation regulations, which inter alia as accordingly as the manner for conducting inspection and investigations, and also provisions related to issuance of or disposal of show cause notice, if any required post completion of inspection or investigation. So these two regulations elaborately mentions that how a complaint will be dealt with, how an inspection and investigation will be dealt with, what are the timelines that needs to be complied by the service provider for submitting the data? What are the timelines which needs to be prescribed by board also for completion of the any complaint or any inspection? These are the general definitions: who are the aggrieved, who are the associated persons, and what is a complaint. This we can discuss in detail. So as per our complaints and grievances regulations, grievance means a written expression by any of the stakeholders of his suffering due to any of the conduct of the service provider. So as we discussed, that stakeholder can be anyone. It can be a debtor, he can be a creditor, he can be a claimant, he can be a earlier service provider also, he can be a resolution applicant who participated in the resolution process, or any other persons which having interest in the process. So what are the essentials while filing a grievances with the board? It should mention the identity of the aggrieved. It should mention clearly that against whom this grievance is, identity of the service provider, detail of the conduct which has caused the suffering, and details of the sufferings, whether any monetary or non-monetary or anything, and how his grievance can be redressed with while with the intervention of the board. So this actually, as per the regulation, needs to be filed within 45 days of the occurrence of the incidents. But if this, in some times that complainant or aggrieved has not filed within 45 days, he can again file it also with reasons mentioned in writing why he was not able to do it earlier. Similarly, as per regulation 2, as per what grievance provides, complaint is also a written expression of a stakeholder alleging contravention any of the provisions of the code or rules or regulations, or any of the circular issued by the board. It can also be similarly it can be done by any of the stakeholder like aggrieved. So what are the essentials of the complaint? That he should mention his identity, and how it can be filed. It can be filed via the offline mode also by giving a hand delivered copy to the board, or online mode also. We have a special dedicated portal for that, for filing of complaint and grievances, along with the fee of 2,500 rupees. Again, this needs to be done within the period of 45 days only, and if not, with the reason duly justified why it was not done in the timeline prescribed by the board as per the regulations. So these complaints and grievances regulations, it enables a stakeholder to file any of the complaints against a service provider. Besides that, these are not the only mode to file a complaint. Board also receives the complaint from CP-Grams mode, from the Prime Minister's office, or our Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and or any other regulatory authorities, which if they deems fit that it is pertaining to the any of the conduct of the service provider, they forward it to us also for necessary action if required. Filing mechanism, we have already discussed that it can be done through a postal mode, or it can be, there is a dedicated portal for filing of complaints and grievances, along with the fee of 2,500 rupees and within the prescribed timelines as mentioned in the regulations. Now, what are the timelines for disposal of grievance and complaints? There is a specific timeline that board should close the grievance within 30 days if it doesn't require any redressal. And if at all, if any action is required or direction is required to be given to the service provider, that also needs to be done within the period of 30 days. So strict timelines are there for all the processes, including the handling of complaint and grievances. So accordingly, each and every party involved in this process has to act in a time-bound manner while it is to be submitting response or anything. Similarly, board also has to process within the defined timelines, not keep open for long, for 3 months or 6 months. So apart from that, handling of grievances by the board also forwarded some of the grievances. It is a enabling provision is there that it may forward this to the respective IPA where the service provider is a professional member. And upon the receipt of that, IPA shall dispose of it in accordance with their bylaws within the period of 30 days only. Now coming to the disposal of complaints. Now, once a complaint comes to the board investigates that complaints limited to the scope of allegations leveled in the complaint, and it should be done within the period of 30 days. As we mentioned earlier, very strict timelines are there as per the regulations, and it shall close the complaint within the period of 30 days where it doesn't feel that there is any prima facie case, and also give a reply to the complainant, due reply to the complaint. In that particular complaints, if the complainants are not satisfied with the decision of the board that his allegations leveled as per his opinion were correct, but the board has not prima facie, he may file a review also in accordance with the regulation. There is a specific mechanism also for the review. But he has to do similarly within the period of 30 days. A timeline has been described. It cannot be open-ended timeline. And after the receipt of any review, the board shall dispose of the review within the period of 30 days from the request of the review. And that is passed by, reasoned order is passed by the whole time member in that specific case. And upon processing of a complaint, if board finds there is a specific case is made against that complaint, it enables that under regulation 11 of inspection and investigation regulations, it may issue a show cause notice to the service provider with the allegations along with the supporting documents, or the board can also go for a detailed inspection or investigation under chapter 3 for the entire process. So these are the summary timelines which are required to be followed as per our complaints and grievances handling regulations. As per regulation 6.2, aggrieved and the service provider shall submit the information within the period of 7 days. And if due to any timelines or any issues, he is not able to furnish the information within 7 days, it can only be extended up to 7 days more. But that is in the very circumstantial cases. But generally, the service provider should submit the reply or documents to the board within the period of 7 days from the date it is sought by the board. And as per regulation 6.3, 6.4, and 7.3, timeline for disposal of a grievance or complaint is 30 days, which we have discussed. Similarly, in that the issue of complaint, the service provider shall provide the data within the period of 7 days. If not at all, he can request for extension, which wherein further timeline of 7 days can be given on a case-to-case basis, depending upon the circumstances. And further request for review by the complainant, it needs to be disposed of within a period of 30 days. So these are the summary timelines that all the activities or under this particular monitoring needs to be done within a very strict timelines. So everyone needs to follow that. So the idea behind keeping this summary timelines or very tight timelines, if you will see that any service provider should not get harassed for any particular complaint for a longer period, because it should not happen that a complaint or grievance is pending since long 4, 5 months, 6 months, or particular 1 year. So that if there is no prima facie case, that should be closed at all at the first instance only. So this is a typical process flow for handling a complaint and grievance. Once a complaint is received by the board, generally the complaints are dealt by the board only, and grievances, as we discussed, it can be forwarded to IPA, and IPA, as per their model bylaws, deals with that particular grievances and closed within 30 days as per the prescribed time. So if it is done by the board investigates the allegations leveled in the complaint, and based upon the reply or justifications provided by the service provider, the board finds whether there is any prima facie observation or there is no prima facie observation. Here one part is missing. If there is a prima facie observation by the board may issue a show cause notice under regulation 11, or it can go for a detailed inspection or investigation, which is missing over here for the entire process. Or if the board deems fit at that particular stage, the board may issue an advisory and completes the entire complaint. If there are no prima facie observation, okay, then it may close it out. The complainant has an option to review that particular complaint If a review comes, that needs to be disposed on within a period of 30 days. That is generally considered by our whole-time member. And a reasoned order is passed within a period of 30 days. And if at all a show cause notice is issued based upon the prima facie observation, show cause notice after issuance, it goes to the disciplinary committee for further action or disciplinary actions. So this is typical how a complaint and grievances which are received by the board that are being dealt in a time-bound manner. What is the particular process to handle that, and very detailed timelines, and the process has also been given in our regulations. If you will see, as of this bit dated data 30th of June 2022, under the regulation, the board received 887 complaints and disposed of 841 complaints. And through other modes, from like we discussed on CP-Gram MCA, 1599 were received and 1575 were disposed of by the board. And from the other modes like grievances or any other modes by emails or by hard copies, the simple grievances, it is more than 3000. Under examination were only 13. So if you will see, the disposal rate was more than 97%. So these were the advantage of which I was discussing earlier for keeping a strict timelines to dispose of the complaints and grievances received by the board, so that it should not keep open. So for that, each and every person or any entity involved in that particular process, he has to act in a very prompt manner so that it eases our life. So that is all about the complaints and grievances regulations. Now we will move on to further inspections. If at all prima facie observations are there in particular process, it moves on to inspections or further investigations. And based upon the report, if there is a requirement, issuance of any show cause notice or closure of report. And if there at all, if anything for issuance of show cause notice, it is getting referred to the disciplinary committee. So what are the triggers for inspection, which I was discussing, that why inspection is getting triggered against any service provider? There is a complaint filing system with the board. As we have discussed earlier, there is a section 217 which enables any of the aggrieved that they may file a complaint with the board. And we have a very high disposal rate. If we find any prima facie observation, the board conducts inspections or investigation of entire process, whether a CARP or a liquidation. The board also does a regular analysis of the NCLT or NPLAT orders, because day-to-day operations are being held before the Honorable Adjudicating Authority only. And they looks into the process, and during their hearing, sometimes they make the adverse observations and forward their observations to the IBBI to look into that. So these are also the sometimes on basis of prima facie observations become a trigger point for conducting an inspection or investigation by the board. Regular analyzing the data filed by the IPs, because since in the earlier session, you might have seen that Nitika have explained about the CARP forms and all. The board examines the data on a regular basis and identify points if they're at all required for conducting inspection or investigations, if at all on basis of prima facie observation are found on that particular data. These are typical definitions again as per the inspection and investigation regulations. Who are the service provider? It may be insolvency professional agency, because we are talking about the board. It may be IPs, it may be IPEs, it may be an information utility also. Who is the noticee? Noticee means a service provider, or it may be an associate person who is alleged to have contravened any of the provisions of the code. Further, who can be an inspecting authority or investigating authority? It can be officers of the board or a team of officers which have been directed to conduct an inspection or investigation. Disciplinary committee, it comprises of our whole-time member of the board in accordance with section 220 of the code. And document means any accounts, registered documents, records which are maintained in any form, hard copy or electronic form by the service provider or their associated persons. Now, coming to what type of inspections are conducted by the board. One is event-based inspection, which we have discussed earlier also, that on receipt of a complaint, if anything prima facie observation is there with the board conducts an detailed inspection, or sometimes on based upon any order of the adjudicating authority which makes an adverse observation against the conduct of an insolvency professional, or board has some material available on record which it is evident that board IP has contravened any of the provisions of the code. Apart from that, board, as per the duty casted upon the board conducts routine inspection also, which is routine in nature and carried out on a annual inspection plan by shortlisting IP as per the policy of the board. So in that particular routine inspection, the entire assignments handled by the insolvency professionals are included, and all the assignments getting inspected, whether all the activities in the particular process were done in a timely manner, in a proper manner as envisaged under our code and regulations, whether if it was a liquidation regulations, all the liquidation regulations or timelines were followed in or not. If it is a CIRP process, all the regulations were followed in and all the process was completed as per our code and the regulations prescribed. These are again the purposes of inspection: to inquire into the complaints received from various clients, ascertain, as this is one of the part of the routine inspection, to ascertain whether any adequate controls and procedures and safeguards have been established by the service provider to fulfill its obligation, to ascertain whether the provisions of the code or regulations and guidelines issued by the board are being complied with. These are the basic things which needs to be looked into while conducting an inspection. So coming into how a typical inspection moves in the board, and if we will go to one, it starts from the issuance of inspection order. The board or a monitoring division issues an inspection order and appoints an inspecting authority to conduct the inspection of the particular assignment. Now what happens? As per 3, a formal notice go to the service provider after appointment by the inspecting authority, and on the basis of mutual discussions, it can be on-site inspection also. Generally, inspecting officer can visit, meet insolvency professionals at their office and conduct an on-site inspection and examination of records. Now, what happened after examination of records? As per regulation 6A, if the inspecting authority feels that there are gross violations, or if they found that something is there which needs to be reported to the board at an immediate level, an interim reports is getting submitted by the inspecting authority to the board. And if at all some material available is there in that particular report, the board may refer that particular report to the disciplinary committee for immediate action. But if it is not, that is getting done in very specific cases where the inspecting authority feels that the intervention of board is required at immediate level. If it is not, after examination of records, the inspecting authority prepares a draft inspection report along with their observation and submit it to the service provider as well as to the board on a parallel basis. And it gives the service provider period of 15 days to provide a reply on the observation which are covered in the draft inspection report. I'm so sorry. So once service provider submits their reply, and on the parallel basis, board also examines that report, their observation of the inspecting authority, and if at all required, they also give their advice to the board to cover any observation if at all required. So considering both the advices, whether and the reply provided by the service provider on the observations, it gives a submit a final inspection report to the board. The inspecting authorities finalizes their report on the basis of both their observations and submit their final inspection report to the board. And what does the board do after the submission of final inspection report? If you will see at 11, on the basis of prima facie opinion, board examines that report and find that their observations are there and the action should be initiated against that particular process or against service provider. Then it issues a show cause notice to the service provider. If at all, if it is not required, the board closes that inspection at that particular stage. There is no need for issuance of show cause notice in that particular case. But if at all there is a prima facie observation that some contraventions were there in that particular process, the board issues a show cause notice and gives a period of 15 days to the service provider to reply on that particular show cause notice. After getting response from the service provider, the show cause notice along with the response of service provider is getting placed before the disciplinary committee, where the disciplinary committee also gives an opportunity for personal hearing to the service provider. Again, if you will see, as per the part of principle of natural justice, at various levels, an opportunity is being granted to the service provider to submit his response, provide his justifications, whether why the action was taken, which is contravening the provisions of the code. So after considering both their response of the service provider and giving an opportunity of personal hearing, board passes and disciplinary committee passes an order on that particular show cause notice. So this is a typical inspection flow chart, how the things move if an inspection needs to be conducted. A detailed mechanism has also been prescribed in as per the inspection and investigation regulation. So entire thing flows as in accordance with the inspection and investigation regulations only. Moving forward, what does inspecting authority do during conduct of an investigation? So before preparing the inspection report, IE obtains all the, if you might have noticed that a notice is getting served to you and a checklist is also getting served, which gives an exhaustive detail what all information is required by the inspecting authority. So prima facie, what all documents are required at the time of inspection? It is copies of all COC minutes, which if it is an ongoing process, till what time, how many COC meetings have done, all COC minutes, any public announcement made for the process, valuation conducted during that process, the copy of all the valuation reports. If at all Form G has been published in that particular process, the copy of the same, copy of information memorandum, copy of appointment letter of all the professionals, if at all, if any professionals, advocates, valuers, or any other persons are appointed for the assistance of the service provider, copy of all these appointment letters, all the copies of relationship disclosures and cost disclosure filed with the respective IP. If at all, copy of avoidance application, if at all it has been filed with the Honorable NCLT. All the progress reports which have been filed by the NCLTs. Breakup of all the CIRP cost sheet. So this is a exhaustive list, not limited to this, whatever inspecting authority, this is generally a indicative list which an inspecting authority generally requires at the time of inspection. So it is always advised that while handling an assignments, all these documents should be recorded or kept in a safe custody. Copies of all the documents should be, whether it is in electronic form or any other form, that inspecting authority generally asks for these documents once they conduct an inspection. So all these documents should be kept ready or safeguarded while during handling an assignment. So it should not create a problem at the time of inspection only. And list of checklist for the CIRP process, which are provided by the inspecting authority, And there are separate checklists, which I would mention that for the CIRP process, liquidation process, or voluntary liquidation process, separate checklists are getting served and in accordance with the requirement of the process. So that needs to be provided during the inspection. Now further, if at all, upon completion of inspection or investigation, if there is a sufficient cause, the board issues a show cause notice to the service provider or close the inspection as the case may be. And inspection and investigation regulation clearly prescribes what should be the show cause notice. It prescribes all the alleged details of alleged facts and evidencing documents and which provisions of the code or regulations have been contravened. All these things should be clearly come out in the show cause notice and what are actions board proposes to take. All these things should come into the show cause notice, and already we are covering that things. The show cause notice, it provides also opportunity to service provider to make a written submission to the allegations leveled in the show cause notice, and along with the response within the period of 15 days, it is getting placed before the disciplinary committee. And after that, if you will see that DC also, after getting a opportunity of personal hearing, it gives a period of 35, it has a timeline of only 35 days to pass an order. So each and every step is barred by the limitations of timeline limitations, and even DC passes a order within the period of 35 days from the issuance of show cause notice. DC, as being a quasi-judicial body, it may close a show cause notice without any direction. It may give a warning. It may provide a monetary penalty or suspension of cancellation of registration based upon the contraventions which has been prescribed in the show cause notice, if at all found correct. So now we will go through the general findings. The board has conducted various inspections and investigation during that period of 5 years, now being more than 200. The general finding, this is not a very exhaustive list, which I think we can discuss it over here. It would be very prudent that these things, small things can be avoided with during handling and process and should not call for an unwarranted action against the service provider. Because these are the things which we will discuss. These are the repeated things which we have found out based on all the inspections or in many of the inspections. So first one was that IPs accepted the assignments without having the valid AFVs from their respective IP. So as per regulation 7A of IP regulations, that while accepting any assignment, and service provider should have a valid AFA, but in some of the cases it was observed that without having a valid AFA, service provider obtained or accepted the assignments, which ultimately led to action against that particular service provider. Second one, IPs drew their fee without approval of COC, since as per regulation 33 and 34 of CIRP regulations, the IPs or service provider fee needs to be fixed by the committee of creditors only. But in many of the instances or few of the instances, it was observed that service provider obtained the fee without, or if at all the fee was discussed in the COC meeting, that was not getting captured adequately in the COC minutes. So it is very mandatory thing that IPs should get approved their fees from the COC with due voting approvals and duly recorded in the COC minutes. And if at all there is any issue, they should report it to the educating authority for the same, but not review the fees without any approvals. Non-filing of section 19(2) application despite having non-cooperation from the suspended management. In many of the instances, the inspecting authority pointed that various milestone activities like appointment of valuers, completion of information memorandum, publishing of Form G were not completed within the respective timelines or getting delayed by a substantial time period. When it was asked from the service provider by the inspecting authority, the reasons for the delays, the answers were that they were not having a subsequent data from the suspended management, and they didn't have any data to complete these activities. Fair enough. But once the next question was that if they have, whether at all they have filed 19(2) application, the answer was no at that particular time. So it is not, if there is a non-cooperation, there has to be a subsequent or swift action from the service provider. It should not be that there is a service non-cooperation from the suspended management. It should not undue delay the process. Service provider should approach the educating authority and obtain a necessary direction from the service provider. Delay or non-publication of public announcement from the commencement of insolvency. This is the very basic thing, needs to be completed within a period of 3 days on obtention of order. Non-constitution of committee of creditors or it was done within a period of substantial delay. We will discuss one particular order subsequently, that in one particular case COC even was not constituted, or in many of the cases this activity needs to be completed within a period of 30 days, sometimes for a period of 3, 4, 5 months, the COC was not getting constituted. Failure in updating the list of claims, because sometimes it happens with the service provider within a period of 14 days. Sometimes in real estate cases, it happens that claims keep on coming after completion of 14 days also. But once at all it is received, that claims list should be updated on a regular basis. Abdicating his authority to any other stakeholder, resulting in compromise. This is one of the main observations during the conduct of inspection, that primary responsibilities like appointment of professionals, preparation of information memorandum, or publishing of Form G, all these activities were specifically abdicated in the favor of any other individual, or especially to the COCs. All these activities, primary activities which has been prescribed under the CARP or liquidation regulation, has to be completed by the insolvency professional only. Okay, it can be discussed in the committee of creditors, due observations can be recorded in the COC meeting, but finally the basic duties like verification of claims, okay, support services are at all justified. Support services can be taken because such quantum of work cannot be himself handled by the IP. But abdicating an authority, it should not be done at all. Non-filing of cost and relationship disclosures, it happened in earlier cases. We have noticed till 2020, but after that some discipline was there, and on a regular basis these disclosure forms were filed by the IP. Failure to represent CD in judicial forum, thereby affecting the interest of CD. Sometimes arbitration cases are going on in the CD, and when the process enters into the CD, it becomes the responsibility of the IP only, or the service provider, to represent them, CD, on behalf of to represent the CD by them. So it is, next one is failure to take approval of the COC before undertaking related party transaction. In many of the CDs, it was observed that related party transactions were getting done okay. As per our code, it is not barred at all, but it needs to be done with proper due approval from the COC. Section 28 of the code specifically provides that which activities or transactions can be done with the related parties, but with the due approval of COC. It was observed that few related party transactions were done without taking the due COC approval. Non-verification of claim forms in a timely manner, and sometimes the claims were getting delayed as many as more than 1.5 years. So it is not at all you can say accepted that a claim is getting on the table for 1.5 year. It needs to be verified in a timely manner, and if at all the documents are not there, whether it needs to be accepted or till what extent it can be accepted or rejected. It needs to be and all the activities needs to be completed in a timely manner. Allowing payments of dues outstanding as on ICD. This is one of the most common breach as per section 14. After a period, once the CIRP gets start, no pre-CIRP dues has to be cleared. It all forms a part of the claims only, but it was observed in many cases that pre-CIRP payments were done and no due approvals are also not, whether it is not at all actually acceptable that as per our section 14 that any payments should be made of the pre-CIRP period. But it was observed in some of the cases that moratorium was getting breached and payments were made. Non-filing of avoidance transactions and delay in filing of such applications. As per our section 43, 45, 50, 56, this avoidance transaction needs to be completed within a very timely manner. Sometimes we notice that CIRP process started, CIRP period ends. Till that time, even the avoidance transaction was not getting filed. Not providing relevant information to the PRAs. Sometimes we get complaints from the PRAs also that they are requiring adequate information, but that is not getting provided. Leakage of confidential information, especially the valuation reports. Sometimes it happened that even during the course of inspection, it was found that valuation reports were getting shared with any of the PRA without having due approvals. So that is not acceptable at all. Any confidential information should not be part of IM. Failure to record or circulate the minutes in a time-bound manner, very routine thing. It needs to be completed within a period of 48 hours. Inclusion of cost incurred by the COC in IRPC costs. So in many of the instances at earlier levels, it was observed that some costs were done by the COC. Some costs were incurred by the COC, but that was getting included in the CIRP costs, and various disciplinary committee has also taken view on that particular issues and passed orders on that. So if at all any committee of creditor finds that some cost needs to be incurred by them, like legal advisors needs to be appointed, or any other cases, that the cost needs to be borne by in that cases by the COC only, and that should not be a part of IRPC costs. IRPC cost needs to be kept minimal as far as possible, but it should be just duly justified. Failure to adhere to the specified timelines, which we have discussed earlier also. Failure to comply with the directions of AA. Sometimes in the orders also we find that there were clear directions of the adjudicating authority, but IPs were failed to comply with the directions of the adjudicating authority. So these were actually not a very exhaustive general observation, which I thought we should club it out and share it with you, so that these things should be kept in mind while handling an assignment, because these things were getting repeated once we conducted an inspection on a regular basis. It was observed in many of the things that only these things were getting repeated, and these were the general things, not at all some expert thing was required to be completed, all general things which was required to be completed. So this was all the process till that time. If anyone has any question, may come forward, or we may.
I am Srinivas Sharma from Hyderabad.
Yes, sir.
Regarding this, some of the the ex-management and all, they are in the habit of filing some frivolous complaints. How the IPA or IBBI is dealing with
Sir, generally,
complaints?
You feel that as per the regulatory structure, anyone can come and file a complaint.
Yeah.
And we generally asked, you might have noticed that as per the process, we have to get a reply from your side on that.
Okay, that's okay, but it will be very disgusting to attend to all these complaints, because we know that ultimately nothing is there if the process is transparent.
Yes. You might have also noticed after submitting one reply on that complaints, nothing gets triggered on that particular allegations.
Yeah.
You might agree on that also. But as per the part of the process, as a principle of natural justice, we have to hear the other side first also. If at all promoters can file a complaint at all, they have filed, they are filing in a very large chunk. You are aware about that.
Yeah.
But you know that if there is no substantial substance in the allegations level, there is no action that I can tell you.
Even one more area is even this ex-management, they will be in the guise of a prospective resolution applicant. There also they create a lot of hurdles by filing complaints as a resolution applicant through their proxies.
Yes. So that's why I showed you the data also earlier. We have received till 30th June more than 6,000 complaints or more than 6,500. So out of that, how many turned into disciplinary committee orders? It is visible on our website only. Not more than 100, 150, something like that.
But these are all very time consuming, because the office have to run the process, and they have to face COC, adjudicating authority, all these issues apart from the regulatory issues like ROC attending to all these complaints, etc.
Definitely, I can understand that, but as of now, till that time,
because
we
that
cannot.
a little bit annoying, when complaint is filed against the RP. Naturally, of course, he knows that he has not done any mistakes. Still, it is a time-consuming process.
Time is getting consumed. That I can understand your issue.
Correct.
But there is a process for that needs to be complied with. The board also, if it at all is required, the board cannot just keep away that particular complaint. It is from a respective stakeholder. But definitely proper justification. That's why I earlier mentioned also that if there is a proper justification, okay, that I can agree that you are getting busy with, because you have to do the COC meetings, getting appeared before the adjudicating authorities. So bit time consuming process. And in many of the cases, you might have also noticed the IPs require further times. And board is very generally very relaxant on providing, if at all any time is required by the IP service providers, that they are not able to submit reply within a period of 7 days or 10 days, 2 days or 3 days, 4 days, additional timeline is required. Generally, that timeline is granted, not an issue at all on that.
Yeah, that I think the board is very considerate on this.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yes.
The issue is what is the definition of promoter? Most of the time, directors resign around 2-3 years before. There are no directors; all of them resign. Whom do we approach as a promoter? At that time, it's an issue. We don't have any data, and the promoters are not there, and the erstwhile directors have already resigned.
That is a complex issue. Generally, in many cases, shell companies you are facing.
Not even the shell, even in the existing companies, we don't see the directors.
Because generally, in that particular cases, after getting, it is always advisable that from the monitoring angle, I can consider that part, because in many of the cases it happens because a promoter will not, or a suspended management will be hesitant enough, so he will find the loopholes not to cooperate with you. So as an insolvency professional, when it comes to you from the monitoring angle, that it should not happen that from the monitoring aspect, the blame comes on you that you have not handled the process in a timely manner. At the first step itself, you approach, if at all they are not cooperative, or you are not getting cooperation from anyone from the suspended management of it, or if at all someone is not there, approach the adjudicating authority in a timely manner. That is the only thing. Because if you have a proper justification for any action taken or non-completion of any task, nothing will happen after that. If you have, that's why I earlier mentioned that if you have a proper justifications or subsequent actions for not completing any task, nothing will be enforceable on you from that part, from the monitoring end.
So NCLT or adjudicating authority will be the final approach authority.
Yes, yes. In that particular thing, the particular question, you need to approach to the adjudicating authority on.
Thank you, sir.
If you are getting non-cooperation from or no suspended management. So, for a live case study basis, I have kept 2 disciplinary committee orders, which we can discuss. In that, so first one is the case of Mr. Ashwini Mehra in the matter of Educomp Infrastructure and School Limited. A complaint was received by the board, and board examined that particular complaint, and based on the basis of some prima facie material, a draft inspection report was submitted as per the process. After considering the reply from the service provider, a suitable timeline also was given as per the regulations to submit the reply, and then again the matter was placed before the disciplinary committee as per our typical inspection and investigation regulations process. So what were the allegations leveled in that particular show cause notice? We will just go one by one, and what were the findings of DC. This will give you a very transparent hint that at each and every step, show cause notice is not the final one. Each and every step you have a sufficient opportunity to provide your justification, and disciplinary committee also, if the justifications are correct or true in nature or proper, the allegations are getting dropped also. So we will go issues one by one. In the first issue, RP included the fee of legal counsel, which we discussed earlier in the general findings, also in the CIRP cost. And legal counsel was appointed by the COC in this particular case, and a fee was paid to them, and that fee was paid from the CIRP cost on. So it was observed by the DC that particular directions were also issued by the board that as per our circular, that all these fees needs not to be part of the IRPC cost. Still, a payment of 73 lakh was made to the Shardul Amarchand Mangal Das, which was the legal counsel of COC. So by making that payment, there was the violations of the provisions of code and regulation made thereunder, because if at all any legal counsel which needs to be appointed by the committee of creditors, this needs to be, the payment needs to be done by the COC and should not become a part of the CIRP cost. So this issue or contravention, which was a part of show cause notice, was held by the disciplinary committee. Second issue pointed out in the show cause notice was that a forensic auditor was appointed in that particular case. Forensic auditor gives their report for the prescribed period, which was the scope of the audit. And then after considering that report, committee of creditor feels that the scope of that particular forensic audit needs to be extended. And considering the views of the committee of creditors, again, a forensic audit was conducted with extended scope, and the fee was again, which was paid to the crawl, that was included in the CIRP cost. So again, in this case, the disciplinary committee felt that if at all crawl needs to be appointed for any extended scope of work, that needs to be done by the IP only, and not on the basis of decision of committee of creditors, like we discussed earlier, that if at all any primary responsibility which needs to be completed by the IP only, not abdicate any authority to the COC. So on that particular issue also, the disciplinary committee held that particular contravention. Third issue or allegations which was pointed out in the show cause notice, that IP has appointed Duff and Phelps, wherein IP was also a partner. So this particular entity was appointed for providing infrastructure and back office support. So the allegations pointed out in the show cause notice were that there is a conflict of interest, wherein IP is already a partner. He should not have appointed that particular entity for service provider for this is leading to getting any undue benefits. But disciplinary committee on that particular issue took the reply of the insolvency professional and dropped that particular observation and said that if at all Duff and Phelps were appointed, okay, professionals he can appoint as per his authority, and COC needs to ratify the fee. In that particular case, the issue of conflict of interest has already been addressed in the COC meeting. The thing has already been recorded in the COC meeting. And measures were also suggested by the COC that different films teams should be kept separate. So see, if there was a due justification from the IP side, from the service provider side, and that was also duly covered in the COC minutes, disciplinary committee dropped that particular contravention because adequate justifications were there, or no substantial material was there to prove that there was conflict. There was any conflict of interest with the films of the IP. Fourth issue, which was pointed out, that valuation was done in that particular process. Various subsidiaries, cross-holdings subsidiaries were there, and before finalizing that particular report, this particular valuation report was discussed in the committee of creditors meeting, and in that particular report meeting, COC felt that the valuation conducted has not been done in the correct manner, and this value should be revised. Post the revision, regulations provide that the valuer should provide, and our regulations clearly mentions that a copy of the valuation report should be directly given to the RP only, and if at all the COC members require that particular copy, he can obtain so by giving a non-confidentiality undertaking. But in this case, the allegations pointed out that before the submission of the valuation report to IP, that was getting discussed in the COC meeting, which lead to leakage of the value or abdication of authority also. In that particular issue also, disciplinary committee found that not found that any committee of creditors or RP has interfered with the valuation exercise. So IP again, disciplinary committee dropped that particular allegation which was leveled in the show cause notice. Another issue, issue number 5, which was pointed out in the show cause notice, that it was exorbitant costs. Various firms, advocates were appointed in that particular process, and amount was also exorbitant, which was paid to them. So it was alleged in the show cause notice that professionals were getting appointed in arbitrary and non-transparent manner. So disciplinary committee took view of the justifications provided or his reply provided that due approvals were taken by the COC before appointment of any professionals, and their fee were also getting ratified in the COC meetings as required under the CRP regulations. So considering that, DC again dropped that particular issue and didn't held liable IP on that particular issue, that whether there is any contravention of code and regulations. Sixth issue again, which was pointed in the show cause notice, that SPI CAPS was appointed in this particular process as a process advisor to select the PRA. So this is very critical exercise which needs to be completed by any service provider only. However, from inspecting authority found during their observation from the COC meetings that SBI CAPS was excessively involved in that process, and even that PRAs were also opened by the SBI CAPS only, like IP delegated their authority in favor of SBI CAPS only. Again, disciplinary committee took the reply of the IP and took note that SBI CAPS IP cannot be held liable that they abdicated their authority in favor of SBI CAPS. These were generally day-to-day exercise which were getting done by the SBI CAPS, and it cannot be treated as there was excessive involvement of SBI CAPS in that particular case. Issue number 7 in this case was that information memorandum, it contains all the confidential information, and it is required that these details should be kept confidential to maintain their confidentiality. However, it was IP shared a copy of the IM discreetly with one of the RAs. So again, in this case, a copy of mail was there on record, which proved that in discreet manner, a copy of the IM was shared with the RA before even submission of the EOI by them. So disciplinary committee held that particular contravention in this case and said yes, that there is a violation of provisions on that particular aspect. So what was the final outcome of that order? The registration of IP was getting suspended for a period of 6 months, and which we discussed also that extra amount which was paid to SAM and as well as Crawl, which was amounting to 73 lakh and 50 lakh, which was supposed to be borne by the COC only, not by the RP as a part of CIRP cost. So DC directed that both these amounts should be taken from the COC and should deposit that amount in the account of the CD and provide the evidence to the board that this amount has been deposited. So this was the outcome of that particular order. You've seen that certain approximately 7 allegations were leveled in the show cause notice after getting an opportunity of personal hearing. 1 to 3 were only getting held, and on the 4 issues, disciplinary committee considered the submissions of the insolvency professional and dropped that particular allegations. Next order which we will discuss is in the case of Mr. Vimal Kumar Grover. The first contravention which was alleged in that particular show cause notice, that in particular progress report, IP mentioned to the adjudicating authority that suspended director is directly receiving rent. There was one property of the CD which was on a rental basis given to the third party for using at rent. And IP mentioned in this progress report that CD is receiving rent directly and paying loan installments to the ICICI Bank, to the one of the creditor. And even the creditor has also not filed a claim. So there was a clear violation of section 14, which prohibits that any pre-CIRP dues should not be cleared, and in this particular case, RP not even taken over the accounts of the CD, but he was facilitator for that the rent which is getting received by the promoter, that should be getting paid to the ICICI Bank. So DC admitted that part, that deliberately he failed to follow the provisions of moratorium and directly allowing the payments to installments to ICICI Bank, and he knowingly failed to observe the provisions of the section 14 of the code. Second issue which came into that particular show cause notice was non-submission of certain documents to the investigating or inspection authority. There was a self-declaration form which the inspecting authority asked for during the course of inspection from the IP, but IP failed to provide during the course of inspection. But upon submission, IP tendered an apology and given that copy of the report when the matter came before the disciplinary committee. So IPDC took a lenient view on that particular issue since the copy was submitted, and IP also tendered an apology on that. So they take a lenient view and dropped that observation. Third point which was noticed in that particular show cause notice, that one of the operational creditor, they submitted the claim and IP failed to verify that claim, which needs to be completed within a period of 45 days. And it was observed from the first progress report, IP mentioned that even after the period of 2.5 months from the date of last date of receipt of claims, only one claim has been received, and that too has not been verified. So what were the findings of the DC on that? In that particular issue, DC noted that IP attempted to justify his inactions and raises the question of admissibility of CIRP only. And it is one of the primary responsibility of the IRP that he should verify the claims in a timely manner as per regulation 13.1, and by not verifying the claims, and that too in that particular case there was no substantial claim, sometimes it happens in real estate cases, number of claims comes. But in that particular case, no financial creditor claim was there, only one OC claim was there, and that too was kept for a 2.5 months period, not get it verified whether it needs to be accepted or rejected. So DC noted that there is a clear violation of regulation 13.1 of the CRP regulations. Fourth one was the non-constitution of COC. The allegation was that even one claim has been, if at all, has been received from the operational creditor, that needs to be verified. And if at all, if no claim was from the FC, if at all OC's claim is genuine, the committee of creditors should be formed. IP should have gone ahead and formed the COC with the operational creditor only. But in that particular case, it was observed that no COC was constituted even after a period of 4.5 months from the date of commencement of CIRP. And as per regulation 17.1, after constitution of COC, within period of 2 days, the report needs to be submitted within COC. If at all COC was not constituted, the report was also not submitted to the adjudicating authority. What were the findings of the DC on that? IP failed to file a report of constitution of COC. IP failed to perform his duty under the code by not constituting COC, because if at all the financial creditor claim was not there, operational creditor claim could have been verified, and if it could have been genuine, the COC should have been constituted and the process should have been taken forward. So the DC also held in that particular case that IP contravened regulation 16 and 17 of the CIRP regulations. Next issue was that adequate steps not taken under section 19.2 of the code. Again, the similar issues coming out in that particular, which we observed or discussed in the general findings. Again, the allegation was there once the inspecting authority investigates that issue, why the CIRP was not taken forward. The response was that board of director didn't cooperate with the IP. But IP also, again, if there was a non-cooperation from the IP side, he should have gone ahead and moved an application before the AA for directions to the suspended management, so that they should cooperate with the service provider to keep the take the CIRP process further. But it was not in this case. No 19.2 application was also filed. So what were the findings of the disciplinary committee in that particular case? That if at all non-cooperation was there, IP should have gone ahead and file an application with the adjudicating authority to get any assistance from the suspended management, but IP failed to take any action and kept the CIRP hanging for a longer period. So IP has contravened section 19 of the code. These were the findings of the disciplinary committee. Non-submission of disclosure forms, regulation 34A of CIRP regulation, disclosure of item-wise IRPC cost, disclosure to IPA, disclosure of fees, all these things were not submitted. Disciplinary committee again noted that IP contravened both these regulations since no data has been provided under these regulations. So all these 6 allegations in that particular case, apart from one where some information which was not provided to the inspecting authority and it provided to the DC took a lenient view, all other 5 issues were held by the disciplinary committee and cancelled the registration of Mr. Vimal Kumar Grover and debarred him from seeking any assignment, seeking also fresh registration for a period of 1 year from the date of the said order. So these were the 2 orders which I thought I should take it live, because again, both these 2 orders coming to that point only, which we observed in many of the instances. So these were the 2 ideal cases which I thought we should discuss it, and you can avoid these things in the future if at all it is happening. So this was from my side. I think it should have cleared doubts from your mind. Yes, please.
Sir, can a COC member ask for valuation report from the RP after giving the undertaking no confidential?
Yes, and as per our CRP regulation, if you will see, NDU he has to sign, And after giving a non-confidentiality undertaking, you can give a valuation report to your COC member, but not before giving a ND.
But in one of my case, RP is denying to share this valuation report. He says I can share only the value of that valuation report. I can't share a copy of the report. Is it so?
That is, no, if it is a COC member, if you go to the CRP regulations, it is clearly mentioned. As per the regulations also, you can show that.
What he says is correct. It is slightly ambiguous. It says the value should be provided. It doesn't say the valuation report should be shared.
Yes, so if
of course, normally all RPs are sharing, but that's just a different issue. But the slight ambiguity is there in the regulations, whether to share only the values or reports to be shared.
I will still note it down. If there is any ambiguity, we will try to resolve that part.
Yes.
The code or regulations is not with me right now, but I will still check and revert back to you on that.
Right, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sir, one more clarification, whether if any ongoing IAs are there in a particular case, whether it is CRP or a liquidation, whether these things have to be reported on a periodical basis to IBBI in any disclosure or any report form, or how it is? Any requirement is there like that?
Sir, what I can recall, CRP 8 form is there, which prescribes that all after a period of 30 days on a regular basis, you need to file it. But not all IAs as of now.
Okay, but no, any delays and all, that's okay. But whether all these, if any IAs are filed by whether the suspended management or any RE resolution applicant or any other interested stakeholder, whether those things have to be reported to IBBI in any specific form?
As of now, there is no mandatory provision for that, what you are asking. So if there are no further questions, we may conclude the session.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot. Nice session. Sure.
I hope that there are no further questions. So then we can wind up the session.
Yes, Nitika.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. And thanks to both the speakers today for the wonderful presentation and sharing the details of the subject. Thanks a lot, sir, on the behalf of ICSI IP for taking out time from your schedule and being present here.
Madam, one request is please share these PPTs to all the participants.
Yes, sir. I'll share it. Once I'll receive it from the sir, I'll share it with everyone.
Okay. I'll share it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.